Hello, I have a question for you. What can astrology tell us about the future? Well, if you think astrology is nonsense, it cannot tell us anything about the future. Can astrology predict with some probability what will happen in the future? Is that the purpose of prediction in astrology? What I'm suggesting to you now is that the fundamental purpose of astrology is to describe the underlying energy dynamics and to assist people in making decisions based on these underlying energy dynamics. So, we can see the likely outcome, but the outcomes, what will happen in the future, of course, is going to depend a lot on the decisions that people make. It will also depend on things that astrology doesn't have control over or has no insight into at this time, such as changes in the weather or any number of things that may happen. So this is my fourth video on the 2016 presidential campaigns by the Democratic and Republican parties to select their candidates. And I'm making this video on the morning of March 1st, 2016, which is Super Tuesday. There are a lot of elections today. And what I'm going to share with you in this video is how we use astrology for its primary purpose, which is to guide people, to give them information that will help them make the best decisions. And I'm going to list a number of recommendations to the candidates of what I think they can do and should be doing to improve their candidacy, to get more votes. Okay, so the situation right now is for the Democratic Party, we have two people campaigning, Hillary Clinton, and she's expected to win. At this point, it's looking very strongly in her favor. And I do not have an accurate birth time, but the birth time that is often given for her is working pretty well. And there are some key planetary patterns, in particular this 11th harmonic pattern that I'm going to refer to in this video and I've referred to in others, is strong in her chart into the late afternoon. And so I think she was born in the morning when this pattern is strong. And it's a similar situation with Bernie Sanders. There's a time floating around that was given. We don't have it from a birth record. I'm going to assume that that time is fairly good, and some of the things in his ninth harmonic chart do last a long time. Some are sensitive to the time, however, but I think the basic pattern is there. Now, in a previous video, I predicted that Bernie would narrowly beat Hillary. That, at this moment, does not appear to be like it's going to happen. But also, Hillary is doing a much better job in her campaign. I'm going to list 5 things that Bernie could do better, and if he had been doing these things, he would be doing better in the polls. Okay, and of course, all is not lost for Bernie. I expect him to last a long time in this campaign, and if he starts doing some things he needs to do, I think he'll move up, and he still has the possibility of a surprise, a turnaround, and winning the nomination, or at least getting the most votes. It's possible that the Democratic National Committee will nominate Hillary instead of Bernie, even if Bernie gets more votes. I'll talk a little more about that in a minute. Now, in the Republican Party, Donald Trump is expected to win. We have an accurate birth time for him. He is running a good campaign. I predicted that he would win. There are a number of things he can do much better, and I will talk about those. Now, Marco Rubio, Ted Cruz, John Kasich, and Ben Carson, the other candidates for the Republican Party, I have not done much on their chart with their birth charts. I've called up a few of them, didn't have a very accurate time. If I didn't even check carefully to see if I have a time for any of them, so I haven't looked at those very carefully. So I'm going to focus on these individuals. Now, things Bernie can do better. Number one, excuse me, we look at Bernie's chart. He has this huge ninth harmonic pattern. This ninth harmonic theme is the key to his campaign. It's the key to his story. I'll show it to you very quickly. I'm in the Series 2.0 software. Here's the ninth harmonic chart for Bernie Sanders. And he has Jupiter opposite the Moon, Uranus midpoint. Moon is at the Saturn-Uranus midpoint, so this is a pattern involving 4 planets making 2 midpoints, and then also, well, let's call up the midpoints, and let's call up a pop-up wheel. so we can see all this. There, change that wheel style to something a little nicer to look at for tutorial purposes. Right, so the Mercury is also opposite the Sun, Jupiter, midpoint. There are all these midpoints going on, and there's what we call a midpoint isotrap, where Jupiter is opposite Moon Uranus. It's also opposite Mercury Neptune. So we see here the passion of his Uranus conjunct Mars Neptune, almost exact. The Moon at Saturn Uranus, revolutionary spirit, not going to put up with the old system anymore. Jupiter Moon Uranus, he's enthusiastic about making these changes. This whole ninth harmonic theme of Bernie Sanders to overturn the power structure and give the power and voice back to the people. Well, ninth harmonic, if you think about that pattern, is usually personally engaged in the community. He needs to get more personal. He needs to tell more stories about himself, his struggles with civil rights, make closer connections personally with people, not just talk about it. So he needs to tell more personal stories and engage more personally with people in the community. Very, very important. It would reflect more clearly what he does and who he is and what his goals and dreams are for the country. Now this is even more important. Foreign affairs. He's losing the debate in foreign affairs, and he doesn't have to be losing it. What he has hardly targeted at all is a huge issue, which is the inclination of Hillary to get involved in foreign regime changes and interventions. That's what we see in Hillary's 11th harmonic chart, which I mentioned in previous videos, this Mars, Jupiter, Neptune T-square, and I talked about how Bill Clinton, Barack Obama, and George W. Bush all have the strong Jupiter, Neptune in the 11th harmonic. They're all very optimistic about the ability of the United States to reach out and spread a sense of freedom and goodwill around the world. In a recent debate on the Republican side, John Kasich even mentioned this with North Korea having a lot of instability. He says, given this instability, there might be a time for us to move in and push a regime change. Still talking about regime changes. Still this idea that if only we could take these rogue nations with a lot of corruption and negativity and show them the light and lift them up, we wouldn't have these big enemies out there. It hasn't worked in the past. And this is something that Bernie could really emphasize. Very interesting. Just a few days ago, Hawaiian Representative Tulsi Gabbard resigned as vice chair of the Democratic National Committee for the reasons that Bernie should have been emphasizing all along. So this is good news for Bernie. He hasn't said it, but somebody else has come out and strongly said it and resigned as vice chair of the DNC. And she makes the statement. I've got a website here at nypost.com. Cheers to Tulsi Gabbard for standing up to the Clinton machine. This article captures the spirit of what Tulsi Gabbard did, and the writer of this, the columnist who wrote this, really catches the flavor of what's going on. You know, Gabbard's taken a risk in standing up against the way the DNC is operating. And Gabbard says she's an Army veteran. Army veteran made a plane. She backed Sanders in good measure because he'd be a wiser commander-in-chief, quote, so that we don't continue to find ourselves in these failures that have resulted in chaos in the Middle East and so much loss of life. That's what Bernie should be emphasizing. That should be one of his main themes. He's not bringing it out. He's letting Hillary lead the discussion on foreign affairs. And how do I know this? Because I look at the astrology charts. It's not my opinion based on looking at them so much as looking at the astrology chart. The astrology chart tells me this 11th harmonic pattern is inclined to these things. It's exactly what happened. It's a theme running throughout all of the recent presidents of the United States. It's been continuous. Now maybe Hillary won't make those mistakes in the future. She hasn't made it clear that she won't. This is a huge difference. Tulsi Gabbard is so fired up about it, she resigns as vice chair of the DNC, and she states clearly what Bernie should be saying all along. He should be taking the high road on this discussion of foreign affairs. Instead, what Bernie has done is he's talked about his vote for that he did not vote for the Iraq War years ago. That's in the past. What about now? The situation now is there's no evidence that Hillary's going to change. That she's engaged in all these finely nuanced relationships and how we can weave our way into these things. Too much presence of the United States and too much engagement and too much emphasis on regime change, things like that. Tulsi Gabbard stands up and says it loud and clear, and she is an Army veteran. She has the you might say the right or the standing to do that. So this is a big mistake of Bernie. He's lost the debate, and it's costing him a lot of votes. So now he's gotten this blessing and benefit of Tulsi Gabbard standing up. He needs to take advantage of that. I don't know if he has yet or not, but he needs to start saying, stand up in front of a group and say, I want to talk about foreign affairs today, and here's what's going on, and really push this theme. Why should he push it? Because it's true. It's real. It's an important thing. In looking at the astrology charts, we see the energy patterns behind the behavior. And this is a real issue. And when you hit these buzzers, these real issues where there's real energy, you get a real force going. So this would work for him. Third thing, he needs to get more creative in his speeches. He keeps repeating the same things over and over again. And Hillary has very wisely picked up on this. She's basically calling him a one-trick pony. She doesn't use those words, but that she has a more comprehensive plan, a more complete plan, not just a few ideas without details. So he needs to use some more colorful speech, some more themes. Here's an example I dreamed up. Maybe I'm not the best speech writer in the world, and maybe this isn't perfect, but just to give you an idea, he could say something like, unlike recent Republican and Democratic presidents, both Republican and Democratic, and Secretary Clinton, my attention is on one major regime change. The regime change in the United States from the oligarchy of the ruling billionaire elitists to a democracy of the people. I'm using a lot of his own language, but you see how he can capture some new issues on foreign affairs and weave those in with other things he's talked about. I've combined here the idea of more colorful, creative speech, more different variety of issues, combined with what I said in point number 2, that he should be taking the high road on foreign affairs. Number 4, thing that Bernie can do differently is don't criticize Trump for being racist or xenophobic. Maybe he is racist. Maybe he is xenophobic. It isn't going to work. How do I know it's not going to work? Because I look at the astrology charts. When you look at Donald Trump's 17th harmonic chart, which I didn't bring up yet, so I'll go back to his natal chart. Just go over here to harmonic chart and select 17. I'm in the Sirius 2.0 software, which allows me to navigate through these things and create these things very quickly and easily. And we see that in the 17th harmonic, Trump has a moon, conjunct Jupiter, trine, a Mercury-Uranus conjunction, so 4-planet pattern, moon and Jupiter, trine, Mercury and Uranus, also Sun and Mars are square the Mercury and Uranus. So what this means, the 17th harmonic is the harmonic of building bridges across cultures, of sympathy and compassion. Now, Trump has a very weak 9th harmonic. He's not attuned to building community and, everybody helping each other out collectively and so on, like Bernie is. But he does have 17th harmonic. And that gives an interest in different lifestyles. And he's currently married to a lady from Eastern Europe who speaks 5 languages. Bernie and Hillary are not married to foreigners who speak 5 languages. He crosses cultural boundaries. It's not going to stick. People that know him personally, I heard Don Lemon, the newscaster, say that he doesn't think Donald Trump is racist. They've gotten to know each other pretty well. Don Lemon is, I guess you'd call him African American. He's got dark skin. He doesn't think he's racist. So it's not going to work. You may say it is going to work. You may say, oh yes, he's racist, go after it, it's going to work. The astrology says it won't work because he's got 17th harmonic. He doesn't have a weakness there. And this is a mistake Hillary has made in a recent speech where she said, instead of building walls, we should build bridges. Well, it's a very clever slogan. Sounds very cute. It's the kind of things that politicians say. If she was already nominated and if Trump was nominated, he would tear that to shreds. He would say something like, oh yeah, so Hillary wants to build bridges. Let's build a bridge to Mexico and help the drug lords bring their drugs in more easily. So of course we want to build bridges. But having little slogans like this is not going to be very effective in characterizing Trump as xenophobic or something like that isn't going to work. It may be true, but it isn't going to work. It isn't going to work because he doesn't show a weakness there in his chart. In a minute, I'm going to tell you where he does have a weakness and what would work against Trump. And I've seen letters coming out of the Bernie Sanders campaign also knocking Trump for being against Mexicans and so on. I know it's an argument. I know a lot of people believe in it. A lot of people believe it's true. I'm just telling you, Trump continues to get votes, and this isn't going to stop him. Now, he recently failed to take immediately take a stand against David Duke. He was interviewed by a reporter. I'm trying to remember his name. And Jake Tanner, is that his name? Interviewed him and asked him about the support that he's getting from David Duke, a former leading person in the Ku Klux Klan. And Donald Trump didn't come out loudly against it. He says, oh, I don't know David Duke. Of course he knows who David Duke is and what he's involved in. He's made statements about him in the past that he doesn't like him. Of course he doesn't like him. The guy's a nut. He's evil and destructive mentality of these white supremacists. So he knows about this. He didn't say anything. Very poor response. Maybe I'll make another video, by the way, that shows Trump's inclination to not do very well around that time due to some particular transits. But in any case, he messes up. He doesn't respond very well. Trump does not respond very well to this question. So, of course, as expected, Marco Rubio and Ted Cruz jump on this. That's fine. They can jump on it. It's not going to help tremendously in their campaigns. In a minute, I'll tell you what you can, how you can respond to Trump successfully. But going after him for these things is not going to last. It's not going to change the voting. Now, one other thing Bernie should really emphasize to make clear is his desire to protect the citizens of the United States. His ninth harmonic pattern, when we look at those midpoints, go back to Bernie's ninth harmonic pattern, and the midpoints, this Uranus at Mars, Neptune, this whole emphasis here of so many, even the Jupiter, Moon, Uranus, the whole huge amount of activity in his ninth harmonic means you want to build community and you want to build safety. You have to be safe. He should be emphasizing the ways he's going to make Americans safe and not fall into this liberal conservative duality that the media at least thinks is everybody is on this like single linear spectrum from how left or right are you. It's sometimes more complicated than that. And somebody who's way to the left like Bernie can still be very strong on measures to protect the USA from influx of drugs across the Mexican border, which is where a lot of them come from, or for any other means. He should advocate strong screening of immigrants and visitors. So he shouldn't polarize himself against people like Donald Trump who want to isolate the United States and protect it in a very rigid way. Of course, that's not the way that Bernie would do it. It's much more compassionate and community-oriented. But he should be emphasizing, ironically, some of the same themes as Donald Trump about protecting Americans. So a lot of people are afraid that, yeah, we want to be accepting. We don't want to be against certain religions or groups, but at the same time, the terrorists can take advantage of this, people with evil intentions, and get into the country. He needs to become strong on this, very, very strong on this. Not as important as some of the other points I made, but also important. If he does all those things, Bernie will do much better in the polls. He will get many more votes, especially the whole foreign affairs thing. So this is the things that you can see by looking at the astrology chart, seeing what it says, seeing how the person behaves. And by the way, Bernie has done some things very beautifully. His advertisements bring out this sense of brotherhood and sisterhood, and sometimes he uses the word brothers and sisters, and this is perfect. One person may use the term brothers and sisters, and it may sound like too new agey or unrealistic, but when Bernie says it has soul, it has caringness, it's genuine, so he's doing a lot of things right. Now, another thing Bernie could do, by the way, is he could suggest that Hillary is the conductor of the slow train that compromises at every step, that reinforces and supports big money, the big money that owns America. And he's on the fast train to real solutions. And that people doubted that this could be done. They doubted that anybody would vote for him, doubt that he would get as far as he has. But he's done it. People don't want to compromise anymore. Just go right to the answer, and you can do it. And Hillary's still following the way that everybody thought you had to do, which is to compromise, accept this money, give speeches to Wall Street, etc. He could make his point much, much clearer about what he is, that he has the dynamic ninth harmonic pattern. Hillary has some ninth harmonic, and she's got that Mars, Jupiter, Neptune, 11th. She's a different person. He could really accent these differences, and make it much clearer and give some more colorful imagery, some clearer ideas of what's going on. Okay. One other thing I forgot to put down here about Bernie. This may sound funny, may sound silly, but I was watching him go up to the stage and his wife was with him. I noticed she was wearing these kind of flowing clothes. They looked very casual, almost hippie-ish. He doesn't want to get himself into being defined as a continuation of the 60s or something. He doesn't look that way. He doesn't have that bearing. But I think his wife does a little bit. And believe it or not, little subtle things like this are important. Another change they could make would be that his wife should look presidential. She should look dignified. That would help. Otherwise, he's going to get cornered into this box of being this sort of counterculture guy. Now, I have advice for the Democratic National Committee. In addition to candidates, I have some advice for them. If Bernie does win the vote, I don't think he will. It doesn't appear like he will. Well, actually, I did predict he will, so I'm not giving up. I think he may still win the vote if he takes if he incorporates some of these things I'm suggesting. Really needs to take advantage of what Tulsi Gabbard just did. He could really fire up his campaign. He could turn things around. He could still win. He probably won't do very well today, is what people are saying in the Super Tuesday, because he's not doing very well in the South. He should have been doing well in the South. If he had been more personal, he would do much better than he is. It's almost too late. Well, it's too late for that, for these votes on Super Tuesday. People are voting right now. So he's lost some of the opportunity for that. But in any case, he can still turn things around, and he could surprise us and come out on top. Now, if there was a surprise and Bernie did get most of the delegates, in the Democratic Party there are these things called superdelegates, and the Democratic Party, the DNC, the Democratic National Committee, can select Hillary even though Bernie has gotten more votes from the people. If this was to happen, it appears unlikely, but if it was to happen, yeah, it would be a disaster for the Democratic Party, and probably they will lose the election. And I read this thing in a website, BloombergView.com. I'll just read this quote from a columnist there, political expert. I'm not a political expert. I'm just same as every other American. I watch the news and try to keep up with what's going on. But with the power of astrology, I often can see things that the experts are not seeing. The experts are getting fooled all the time. Why is Trump doing so well? Why is Bernie Sanders doing so well? Things they don't predict that astrologically you can predict. Well, anyway, getting back to the superdelegates, let me read this quote from this article at BloombergView.com. A case where superdelegates could be helpful would be if a factional candidate strongly disliked by the rest of the party nevertheless wins a slim majority of the pledged delegates. Well, that could be Bernie Sanders. Could also be Donald Trump if he was to win by a very slight margin, where the establishment of both parties don't like these candidates. So if in the case of the Democratic Party there are more superdelegates, and it could be a bigger problem. So if Bernie Sanders was to win by a slim majority, he says don't panic about superdelegates. If a candidate wins a decisive victory in the primaries and the caucuses, the superdelegates aren't going to upend that. If it's a tie, they'll make the choice, and nothing is wrong or undemocratic about that. This whole image that he's giving is flat out wrong, because the issue is not a tie. The issue is that if Bernie was to win by a slight margin and they pick Hillary, you're going to have a lot of people extremely upset in the Democratic Party. And believe it or not, I think some people will actually vote Republican, and a great many won't vote at all. They'll be just fed up with it. How do I know that? Why do I see that? Because you look at Bernie Sanders' ninth harmonic, it's explosive. He has Moon at Saturn, Uranus. This is not a joke. He's not just about making, a socialist system. It's not that simple. This is about a revolt against the fabric of the way things work and the control of a powerful elite. Everything Bernie says, he is dead serious about. This is explosive energy, and if you keep disregarding it and play the good old boy system, you're going to be in for some real trouble, because everybody who's in the Bernie camp is on that vibration of Bernie's ninth harmonic chart. They're tuned into his ninth harmonic chart. They're feeling the burn. They're feeling that ninth harmonic chart, and they're going to go wild against the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party is going to lose a tremendous amount of support. This is what you can do with astrology. You can see what the energy patterns are behind the behavior. You can see what the force is. And it makes it crystal clear what's going on. That's why I don't know what's going on with Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio. I just watch them. I can't feel what's underneath it because I haven't done their astrology charts yet. So this is it just becomes crystal clear when you see what the energy patterns are. Now, I have advice to all opponents of Donald Trump, whether it's the Democrats or the Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio and John Kasich and Ben Carson, whoever it is that's opposing him. Where is Donald Trump's weak point? Well, his weak point is he doesn't handle his Leo rising very well. He's got Leo rising, very end of Leo. It's Leo and not Virgo, and he's got Mars and Leo near the ascendant, and he doesn't handle his Leo very well. He's got a lot of the negative Leo traits as well as some of the positive ones. He's self-centered. He focuses on himself. He's always talking about the polls. He's always talking about how he's winning. He turns everything around to himself. This is permanent. This is in his chart. It's not just some transit that goes by for a few days. It's a basic thing about him that he doesn't handle very well. And this they can go after. They can just say that his constant references to the polls and how successful he is not what America needs right now. And what they can do is not fight Donald Trump on his terms. I've seen Marco Rubio go after Donald Trump. It becomes like a boxing match. And sometimes Rubio gets some good jabs in there, and then you're watching these like two kids fighting each other. In the end, Trump is going to win because you're playing his game. Now, maybe Marco Rubio also has a lot of Leo, but that's not the best expression of Leo in the first place. What they should be doing is to not get into this low level of self-absorption with the Leo, but take the higher path of Leo. This is also what Donald Trump could do, is to talk about what they're doing for the people. and make a so the candidates like Rubio and Kasich and Carson and Cruz could be focusing on their programs that they have, their plans for education for all people, and contrast this with Trump's self-absorption. And they would do much better rather than fight Trump on this name-calling game. They're going to lose that. But they could win if they didn't play that game and expose Trump for these weaknesses. Now, what Donald Trump could do to improve his campaign would be to improve his Leo. Turn off some of this self-centeredness. Focus on what is special about others, what the gifts of others are. What Leo does very well is see the gift and what's great about somebody and how they're going to use them. We use them. One thing about successful business people is they find great people and they put them to work. He could talk about some of the heroes in history, the great things people have done. He could even say that Ted Cruz is a great constitutional lawyer, but won't make for a good president, especially at this time. He could just get away from this self-absorption and talk about the unique qualities and capabilities of people, and he would get even more votes and pull even further ahead. Donald Trump has gotten away with a lot of, you might almost say, slanderous statements. He's captivated the imagination of people. I think one reason he's winning also is because Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio are doing such a poor job at competing with him. So he needs to focus on what's special about other people. You know who was a master at this was Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan, whose sun was in Aquarius, but in an advanced system of harmonic analysis, he has, we call it, an internal Leo function. Reagan was one of the first people to emphasize the situation of individuals. And that's what Trump needs to do. Focus on the integrity, power, and what's special about other people and how they're going to help make America great. Okay. His statements that Mexico will pay for the wall, even though the Mexican leaders say they will not, is not very helpful. It's just more of his bravado and arrogance and self-centeredness. He needs to use some more careful analysis. He's got enough charisma and integrity and leadership ability. He's just pushing it too far and too self-centered. He needs to direct his obsessive thinking and strong points of view with care and attention. Okay. Also, his disinterest in any gun control is too extreme and will cost some votes. I mentioned that in the previous video on him. As it heads closer into the this summer with the Saturn-Uranus aspects, that'll be a bit of a problem. So I'm just explaining here how we really use astrology. What we use astrology for is we see what the energy patterns are, we see how things are flowing, and we see what people can do to better channel it. And what I noticed with all these candidates, they need more or better advisors, people who help edit and refine their statements. Here's just one example. In a recent debate, Trump said that his plan for health care reform is to allow competition. Then they asked him, well, tell us about your whole plan. He said, well, I'm going to remove these strings around the states, these obstacles to competition, let all the states compete with each other. And then the interviewers and Marco Rubio also hit him hard for this. It's like, where's the rest of your plan? Well, I don't think Trump had thought through the answer, but at least if he consulted with somebody who's a good analyst about what's going on, they could say, you know what? The reason you weren't able to give more of a plan is because you are saying that you have such faith in the free enterprise system and competition. That's enough. When they want a full plan, they're almost asking, what is the additional government intervention? See, he could think through these things, get more finely nuanced and detailed about the situation. And this is a problem with a lot of these candidates. They're more like philosophers rather than technical analysts. And editors about details. So that's another bit of advice for Donald Trump. and for most of the candidates. Although Hillary, she gets into these fine details. She doesn't need as much advice. She's either getting it or she's so sharp about it that she figures out how to get into the finer points of the discussion and edit and correct what she's done in the past. I don't see anybody else doing that very well, including Bernie, because Bernie is just harping on these same themes over and over again without bringing in some new colors, some new flavors, and definitely he's not emphasizing his strength and differences from Hillary in regards to foreign affairs and how he could take the a leadership position in that, which Tulsi Gabbard has done for him, and he needs to take advantage of that. Hillary's handling herself very well. She's got the 13th harmonic pattern I talked about in previous videos. She's taking the leadership role. She's made this mistake I referred to before about trying to put Trump in a little box in regards to being racist or xenophobic or an isolationist at least. That's not going to work very well in the long run. Her supporters will love it, but it's not going to help her draw in a lot of undecided people. It's okay to say once in a while. Maybe I really wouldn't go there at all if I was her. And so actually this was kind of a slip of her Mars, Jupiter, Neptune T-square in the 11th harmonic, where she just has this sort of super optimistic, easy flowing view of things. Whereas Trump is saying, no, we're going to shut down this influx of illegal drugs into the country. So she needs to not flow into this tendency to be so optimistic and easygoing and light about things that are more serious. Trump would just tear that to pieces. I could just hear him now saying, Hillary's going to build a bridge so that the drug lords can bring their drugs in more easily. Avoid these little sound bites that sound nifty in regards to things like this, because she will lose votes if she does that. And Hillary's lucky that the Sanders campaign has not highlighted the problems of her greater tendency to push regime changes and intervention in foreign affairs. That's what happened in the past. I'm not saying it will happen in the future. It could. If Hillary doesn't learn her lessons, it will. And it's a big difference between between Bernie and Hillary, and it's something that Bernie could emphasize more. Okay, here are links, by the way, to the first 3 videos. If you haven't watched those and you want to watch them on the presidential videos on these campaigns to become the nominee for president in the Democratic and Republican races. And here's our software website. I'm one of the developers of the Series 2.0 software that I'm using in this lesson and the other tutorial lessons. Here's the YouTube channel page. Here's some other websites. Another software website that I'm one of the developers and people involved in. We have an online astrology service. We have a school of astrology, and we have more free services at this astrologyland.com. Okay, my friends. Thank you very much for listening. Let me just say again, what I'm trying to do here is show you how astrology is really used. The primary purpose is to help people make decisions. And if an astrologer is a consultant to one of these politicians, they can sit down, brainstorm, give them ideas like this. And when you get that dialogue going with some advisors, the candidate, the astrologer, you can come up with some great ideas that would accelerate their progress. Frankly, I'm confident that if I or another competent astrologer who uses advanced methods like this worked with the campaign and the candidate, we could help them win. We could definitely help them win. I'm seeing a lot of mistakes Bernie's making. Missed opportunities. Let's not call them mistakes, but some missed opportunities. On the other hand, some of these ads he's done, his forcefulness, his consistency of theme, he's doing many, many things right as well. But we can see some areas of improvement. Really, all the candidates are doing well. The top 3, they're at the top for a reason. Hillary, Bernie, and Trump. But there's Some fine tuning. If Trump rechanneled his Leo energy a little bit, handled this Sun, Mercury, Pluto energy he has in his 23rd harmonic a little better, where he gets obsessive in his ideas. Just a little fine tuning. Same thing with Bernie. Hillary, I think, is doing the best of the three of them in terms of making the right decisions and finely nuanced adjusting of her messages and so on. But all three of them could benefit from some guidance where you look at the actual energy involved and what's behind things. It helps you really see more clearly what's going to work and what's not going to work. Okay, thank you, my friends. God bless. Namaste.